Advancements in the medical field are giving nurses faster, more effective results than ever before. They should expect the same from their education, too. Capella University's game-changing FlexPath format allows you to set your own deadlines and leverage your experience to move faster through your program. So the faster you move, the more money you save. When you're ready, we'll be here. Visit capella.edu for a trial course at no cost to you. Capella University. Don't just learn smarter.
Hi everybody, this is the Cricket Badger podcast.
Each badger marks the track with its own scent.
His black legs are short but very powerful for digging. The name badger probably comes from the French word bêcher, meaning digger.
Hello everybody, welcome along to another edition. It's the Cricket Badger podcast, and it's the one where we're looking ahead to the England games, or we're looking back at the game at Old Trafford. Exciting finish in that one. 2 tests still to come at the Ageas Bowl as Pakistan try and fight back from losing that first game in Manchester. First of all, thank you very much to tvsportsblog.com for their support of the Cricket Badger podcast. It's much appreciated. Give them a follow on Twitter as well, at tvsportsblog. And if you were looking on the at cricket_badger Twitter feed today, you'll know that we did a Ask Badger, hashtag Ask Badger. So there's a few of your questions going to be included in this edition of the Cricket Badger podcast. But to help me, as always, during these England matches this curtailed season, I am joined by cricket journalist Graham Hardcastle. Graham, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not so bad, thank you. It's a fascinating test, wasn't it? You know, for England to come back, it's really set the series up. We're wall-to-wall cricket again with all the county action around as well. So it's a position that we perhaps didn't think we'd find ourselves in at the start of summer, but we're only too glad to have it all back.
I actually thought back in March, April that we probably wouldn't see any cricket at all this year. So everything's a bonus, isn't it, from here on? And
Yeah, exactly.
You're obviously in Bob Willis Trophy action at the moment. The Bob Willis Trophy, to me, Graham, has been a real success this season. I mean, part of that is because we would have been happy to see any cricket at all. But I just think that the 3 regional groups, a lot of really good cricket being played around the country and some really good performances coming in.
Yeah, look, the one thing I want to say at the moment, I completely agree with you. I wouldn't be particularly keen to see it repeated in the current form for next year, i.e. I hope people don't sit there and say, well, 5 games is enough, let's play that. That's a way of reducing the schedule and getting the 100 going and getting more blast action and things like that.
Would you be happy with 10 games, though, in home and away?
The way that I would do it, if that was the case, is I would have the opportunity for counties to play first-class friendlies against each other, whether that be at the start as a way of warming up, or whether that be in any kind of further gap in the schedule for them to say, for example, the 2 counties I cover the most, Lancashire and Yorkshire, for those 2 counties to be able to say, it's the best fixture in county cricket, bar none. Surrey Middlesex obviously runs it close. To me, there is nothing better than a Roses fixture. I would not have a problem watching Roses cricket for 3 or 4 times a year. So almost, I wouldn't have a problem with them saying 10 games in competition with a couple of knockout games. That takes you up to 12. And then you have the ability to arrange a friendly warm-up, which is a first-class game against the county of your choice, or you have the ability to arrange a friendly fixture, I don't know, Yorkshire, Lancashire at Scarborough, for example, which would, yes, be a friendly, but would bring in the crowds and give it first-class status. I wouldn't have a particular problem with that, but, you know, as things stand, I would quite like to see 2 divisions of 14 continue next year.
It's just great to have it back, though, isn't it? County cricket is very, very important to both of us and to a lot of people listening out there, but so is England as well. And we'll come across now to the Pakistan series after England had come back to beat the West Indies 2-1. We had our kind of little bit of, we were slightly nervous that the first test syndrome might continue against Pakistan at Old Trafford. And for a while, I think during that test match, I was convinced it was going to as well. I didn't give England a prayer of chasing down that 277 to beat Pakistan. They did do, but I don't want that to paper over the cracks because I don't think it was a vintage England cricket performance.
I would slightly disagree with you there when you say I wouldn't have given England a prayer chasing 277. I think that, yes, there were overwhelming underdogs in that scenario. However, a target of 277 isn't a wow target, is it?
Only ever been done once before at Old Trafford?
Yeah, but even so, the way that the game is advancing and things like that, 277 isn't beyond the means of quality players, international players, even kind of domestic players, professionals. It didn't amaze me that they chased it down. It surprised me, but the game will throw up over the next couple of years bigger surprises than that.
The Cricket Badger podcast is brought to you in association with tvsportsblog.com. Excellent sporting content. It's well worth a look, and give them a follow on Twitter at tvsportsblog. I'm going to get to the Ask Badger questions then that have been sent in by the Cricket Badger podcast listeners. And we'll start with one here from Tom Grant. He says, Buttler and Woakes were stupendously good on the last day of the first test against Pakistan. What a partnership. I hope to see this partnership continuing on Thursday, he says. I don't see why it's not going to. I mean, I said this on Twitter already, but for the sake of the podcast, I have been very down on Jos Buttler. I have called for his omission from the side. I don't think he scored enough runs, and I think if you ask him, I'm sure that he'll look back over the last 18 months and say he hasn't scored enough runs, because he's a fairly honest bloke, because he showed at the end of the first test match about his glove work. But I think batting-wise, over the last 2 or 3 games, there's definitely signs that he's taking that. He seems to have cleared his mind a little bit. He goes out there with a plan, and he's sticking to it, and it's actually bearing dividends. The only downside with Jos, though, during the first test at Old Trafford was his keeping. He suddenly lost all ability to catch the ball for a period fairly early on in the game, and it could have been really costly in the same way that he dropped Jermaine Blackwood against the West Indies and they won that test match. He dropped Shan Masood a couple of times, missed a stumping off him as well. Don Best must have wondered what he'd done to upset him, and his keeping was called into question all the way through. But I think the one thing that I'll finish on saying was I thought it was an incredible feat of managing his nerves, managing his brain, because a lot of cricket's played in the mind, with all of the pressure, with people like me saying, maybe they should be looking for somebody else in his spot, and for the fact that his dad was taken into hospital during the test match as well, to kind of park all that or use all of that to go into that fourth innings and play like he did. Hats off to him.
Yeah, I mean, he is a top draw player. Whatever you think about him, he has performed in some high pressure situations, World Cup finals, IPLs, finals days, all those kind of things that will have helped him. Yes, he hasn't had the smoothest of rides in Test match cricket by any stretch of the imagination, but he knows what games on the line require in whatever format, and that will have helped him. And I've never had any doubt that Buttler has the ability, and I still think he has, to make a very, very good Test cricketer and a very, very useful component in England's side. I still think that is the case. He just needs what they're providing him, actually, a little bit of backing, a little bit of time, and stick with him, and I think he'll come good.
His keeping was really poor, and if he hadn't got runs, I think it probably would have been his last Test match innings. And the one thing that worries me a little bit is, obviously COVID permitting, the next scheduled trip is away to India, where he's going to have to be standing up to the spinners probably for much of the day, and that seems to be where his keeping really lets him down. Standing up, you can look at Ben Foakes, you can probably name about 10 keepers from around the county circuit that could do a better job than Jos Buttler with the gloves at the moment. I mean, it's the balancing act, isn't it? Is it worth the potential runs he might score against the potential runs he might actually cost you with the gloves?
Well, that is such a difficult one to answer, because you don't know until you're in the position. In this Test match that's just gone, yes, it was, because he got them over the line. And no matter how poor you think his keeping was, he still ended up at the end of the game being one of the two heroes. So in that instance, yes, it may well be that in a first test in Mumbai, it doesn't work out. But that can be the same for any keeper. If you think that Ben Foakes is the best keeper that England have got, he could have a nightmare test with the gloves.
Well, that's one of the things I always think about on Twitter when people are saying, well, Ben Foakes would have taken that. Well, Ben Foakes is still human. And Ben Foakes will have dropped catches in his time. You know, he doesn't catch everything and stump everything that he comes along. He's tidier. He's a better keeper. He's a more natural keeper than Jos Buttler. But he will still make mistakes.
Would Ben Foakes have got England over the line with the bat there? You know, those are the questions that you've got to answer. I believe that Butler's big game experience played a significant part in that innings to get them over the line.
Joe Root actually said to him, I think before he went out there, that, you know, this is made for you. Go out there and treat it as a one-day game. It's made for you. It's a chase.
I have absolutely no doubt in somebody like a Ben Foakes' quality with the bat. I just wonder whether early on in his career, whether he could have just handled that situation as well as Buttler did. Yeah. They're all imponderables, aren't they? That you know, but all you can say is fair play to Jos Buttler, because yes, there was pressure. He would be in my test team. I'm not 100% sure he would be in my team as wicketkeeper.
That's the other question, isn't it? Do you keep Jos Buttler at 6 purely as a batsman and bring in somebody like Ben Foakes at 7?
I don't have a particular problem with Buttler keeping.
It's bizarre, actually, Graham. My problem with Jos Buttler has been his batting. You know, averaging, until the start of this summer, averaging about 22 over the last 18 months. He's not good enough. That's not what he's picked for. That's not what Ed Smith promised the world when he said, right, we're going to play Jos Buttler. But yeah, there's definitely been signs over this summer that he's actually knuckling down. He's tightening up and he's playing to the situation of a test match. So it's bizarre that the keeping had never really been too much of a problem for me. I think he'd snaffled most things that had gone his way. Maybe he isn't the tidiest keeper in the world. It was only really in this last test match that the keeping became an issue. And I think I said on Twitter that, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, he should be ousted or he should at least have the gloves taken off him. I always like to see somebody who's made a bit of a rick given a chance to actually put it right, to go away, work on it for a couple of days with Bruce French and come back and actually say, actually, I'm better than that. You know, that was a one game where I messed up. He admitted it afterwards. But let's give him a chance to put it right. And if ultimately you take the gloves off Jos Buttler, then, yeah, that's a conversation for probably 2 or 3 test matches now, because I think he's earned the right to have a little bit of an easy ride off the likes of me for a bit.
One thing that you cannot deny is that Jos Buttler is a fabulous cricketer.
I don't think anybody ever has denied that, though, have they? It's just whether it's white ball or red ball, isn't it?
To me, this shouldn't really make a great deal of difference.
It makes a massive difference. It makes a huge difference. It's 2 different sports these days. You need a completely different mindset, a completely different technique. We've seen Johnny Bairstow go away and become world champion in white ball, and it's wrecked his red ball.
Buttler has all the tools to be, as does Johnny Bairstow, has all the tools to be a top quality cricketer in all formats of the game. I just hope this is the kind of springboard for Jos to show that.
I totally agree. I'd love to see him become a real force in that test team. I really would. And I will certainly lay off him for the next 2 or 3 test matches. But the jury is still out from me, but he's making progress. Fed up of collecting your team's matchday subs? Worried about carrying cash post-COVID-19? Try slateapp.co.uk. Less contact than contactless. Slate, the smartest way to collect weekly match fees and more. Download the app, slateapp.co.uk. Not just for cricket, any clubs that collect subs. It just makes sense. Stick it on the slate. slateapp.co.uk. Let's move on to Chris Woakes, because Chris Woakes is an unsung hero of that England Test team. His average with the ball in England's about 22 or 23. He's phenomenal in English conditions. He hasn't scored many runs of late, and getting England home with that 84 not out probably wasn't going to be expected by too many people, that he came to the party and came to it in such style. You know, he's a lovely bloke. You see him interviewed. I've met him a couple of times, and he's really, when people say he's the nicest guy in cricket, I don't think that's an exaggeration. And it's good to see the good guys win, isn't it?
Yeah, and take away his quality as a bloke, again, his quality as a cricketer is outstanding. He is just one of those people who you would always want on your side. Yes, he is unsung, but I bet he's not unsung by those in the England dressing room or those in the Warwickshire dressing room.
So it's going to be interesting whether they take him away to India, though, isn't it? Because that's not a tour that really suits him. Certainly not in terms of his bowling.
I think you will find that kind of question is a question that is probably, I'm speaking now and a heck of a lot can change, but my reading of the situation now would be that they will be taking a big enough party to India due to COVID restrictions and biosecure bubbles and replacements and all that kind of stuff for there to be a place in that squad for Chris Woakes. On a normal tour, then that question may well be a very, very valid one. I just think that they may be taking extra bodies to India if, of course, that tour goes ahead. I mean, we're still 4 or 5 months away from that, so a heck of a lot can change. But I would imagine that they will be taking a kind of increased number in their party. I would never even expect him not to be in that best 22 or 23, even with 3 or 4 spinners.
Going back to the hashtag Ask Badger questions, Jane, a regular listener of the Cricket Badger podcast, she's asked a question. I'll answer this one, Graham, because I've done a little bit of research in this. I don't expect you to have to answer this one. But she says, if Chris Woakes was going to be signed up for a hair product, which hair product would it be? Now, I basically did a little bit of Googling on this one, Jane, and I found a company called the Sugar Bear Hair Care Company. And seeing as he's a bear, he's a Warwickshire lad, seeing as he's known to be one of the sweetest guys in the world, sugar seemed to be appropriate, and it's obviously hair. So, Sugar Bear Hair Care. That's the answer to that question. The other question that Jane posed, it was a double-pronged question. Predictions for team selection for England for the next Test match. News today, Jimmy announced a press conference. A lot of people were thinking that was going to be Jimmy saying sayonara. It thankfully isn't. He's basically said he knows he needs to play a little bit better if he's going to be picked by England, but he is more than happy to carry on playing for England, so I think that's good news. A lot of people are writing him off when they shouldn't do. And unfortunately for Dan Lawrence, a bereavement in his family has meant that he's left the bubble, so our thoughts are with him. And same with Ben Stokes as well. He's heading off to New Zealand now to go and join his family. So best wishes to Ben Stokes too. But that does leave England a little bit slightly different kind of complexion to the team, isn't it? I did actually say during the first Test, Graham, that over the last 2 Test matches when Ben Stokes was played purely as a batsman, I felt he lost a little bit of his superpowers. He's an all-action guy, isn't he? He likes to be involved. He likes to have the ball. He likes to take catches. He likes to bat forever. He likes to do all of the things that, not sit down for very long. And I think when you take his bowling or the capacity for him to bowl away, he didn't seem to be quite the cricketer. Yeah, potentially this is a chance for him to go off and do whatever he needs to do in New Zealand, get himself fully fit, and for England to try and win without him.
He showed a little bit of that when he came in bowling unexpectedly and struck straight away, didn't it?
I thought that was really strange. I think that was him saying, Joe, give me the ball. Joe, give me the ball. I'm going to take 2 wickets. And fair enough, that's his kind of style, isn't it? But he was limping throughout that spell. That's no way to treat one of your prized assets, is it?
Well, as you say, if he's saying to Root, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball, as a captain, you always want people to stand up and want people to take responsibility. So you can't really criticise any of the management or the hierarchy for that. I think that is just Stokes' kind of modus operandi, really. He just wants to be doing everything as you say. He's going to be a huge hole to fill. It opens up possibilities for young players. I'm including Zach Crawley in that, obviously front and centre. He's not done a great deal wrong in Test match cricket. He's going to get another opportunity, you would think, to shine. And then whether it's somebody like James Bracey or even Ben Foakes comes into the side as well, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. It's quite a difficult one to work out how they're going to go. Do you change too much of a winning side, even though there were obvious flaws in the performance in the early stages of that game? I'm not 100% sure, really.
Brought back Ollie Robinson into the bubble, haven't they, from Sussex after he took a load of wickets in the first round of Bob Willis Trophy matches, and thought on the streets, Huggy Bearers, that he might get his Test debut in the first game at the Ageas Bowl. Seems likely, I think, that Jimmy will get a rest. And he looked like he needed one towards the end of that test match. It was the first time I think I've ever watched a test match with Jimmy playing where I thought he looks knackered and a bit old. Yeah, I think he probably deserves to put his feet up and then come back for the third test match. So I think they'll probably reshuffle the pack a little bit with the bowlers. But I think you're right. I think Zach Crawley comes in at number 3 and everybody else kind of moves around a little bit. And that's probably the replacements in terms of the batting.
It'll be exciting to see Ollie Robinson if he plays. He's turned his career around quite significantly, hasn't he, from a few early misdemeanors in his Yorkshire days, and that is fantastic. You know, I haven't actually seen a great deal of him since he left Yorkshire. I don't think I've seen Sussex in the flesh since around about 2012 or 13 or something like that. It is a heck of a long time.
I was probably with you then. It was. I've not seen him either. Somebody asked me on Twitter today, what's Ollie Robinson like? Is he the real deal? And I just said, I'm not one of these people that tries to go off what other people tell me. I like to see people myself, whether it be on telly or in the flesh. And I just fessed up. I said, I haven't seen him. I've heard good things, but I've not seen him. And it'd be really interesting to watch him make a test debut, I think. It's
just the way the kind of county fixtures have fallen over the last few years. I think I saw Sussex at finals day fairly recently, but it was one of those where they were a second semi-final and I'd been covering the first and I was a little bit preoccupied writing up, so I didn't take a great deal of notice in that game. But just the way that divisions have fallen and teams that I cover being in different divisions, I just haven't seen him at all. So I can't really give a great deal of opinion. But the one thing I would say is he had his misdemeanors at Yorkshire and he has come back exceptionally well, given his record. You can't argue with that. And he deserves a chance.
Let's go back to the Ask Badger questions then. And the next one is from David Meekings. And David says, is there anyone who hasn't featured this summer who you think deserves a go and why? I'll go in that first. And while Graham has a chance to think through a few candidates. But I think in the white ball game, the 3 games they played at the Ageas Bowl recently, I'd have loved to have seen Sam Hain and Phil Salt involved in those because I think they deserve their chance. Sam Hain's white ball record is just ridiculous, and Phil at the top of the order, guest on the Cricket Badger podcast a few weeks ago, I think deserves his chance. Certainly in a kind of diminished one-day white ball setup as that was, I think that was a bit of a slap in the face for those two for the work that they've done. So I'd like to see them come in and get a chance in the white ball. I think in the red ball, there are chances are few and far between, aren't they? Because the squad that they've got covers most of the bases, and they got reserves as well waiting in the wings. I mean, James Bracey, who Graham just mentioned there, I think he's got a future. It's not doing any of those reserves or any of the hangers-on any good at all, really, is it, being in a bubble and watching their county teammates playing games? But it's just the way that this summer's going. So James in that bubble's not getting too much other than net action, is he, at the moment, in terms of his cricket? But I think Dan Lawrence is the one that I think is next cab off the rank in terms of the batting positions. Zach Crawley is obviously just ahead of him because he's already in the team, really. Zach is, but I think Dan would have been the next batting pick, and obviously very unfortunate that he's got some family problems and is going to have to go away. And if they were thinking about him for the second Test match, that's not going to be a thought that lasts very long because he's no longer there. There's a load of county players around, aren't there, that have got some pretty good stats. So, I mean, there was a little game we were playing on Twitter the other day where we were kind of clipping out the bowling figures off Cricinfo and saying, can you name the player? And you look at Ben Sanderson's record for Northants. I know, yeah, that's predominantly in the second division, but Sando down at Northants has got 200 odd wickets at 20, very similar figures to Ollie Robinson. Yeah, there's a Jamie Porter at Essex, always seems to be just on the periphery and never gets a chance. So I think there's a lot of very good county players out there that are just waiting in the wings, waiting for an opportunity. But those opportunities are few and far between because England are so strong and have got a fairly settled kind of nucleus of 15, haven't they?
Sam Hain is the one. He's one of 2 names that I was going to throw at you. His one-day record is just ridiculously good. Yeah, he's not quite managed to kind of find his range in red ball cricket yet, has he? On a consistent basis.
Yeah, I think he's getting there. He's getting better.
He is. Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt about that.
Not better enough to actually kind of demand a Test place just yet.
No. The other one, who I think has been extremely unlucky to not have any kind at all of England representative honours, be it Lions or be it in the 55-man training squad that they...
I know you're going to say.
I think you do. There's another Ben.
Yes.
Ben Code.
Yeah.
The start to his career over the last 3 or 4 years has been absolutely exceptional. how he's not been given a Lions call. Test call, I can understand. They've got Anderson who does a similar kind of job. So I can kind of understand that. But for him not to have been taken on a tour somewhere, it's quite staggering, really. Yeah. Another one who will have a big future in the game and has had a little bit of England representative cricket is Tom Kohler-Cadmore. I think he's got all the makings of being a top player in both formats of the game. Funny if I say it on a day where he's got a golden duck today, but it's just one of those things. As an opener, you get them, don't you? That's a hazard of the job.
Another name I'll throw at you that I've not seen, not recently, is Verdi at Surrey. A lot of people talk about him as a potential spin candidate, certainly for the Indian tour.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of him. He's got quite an innocuous action, really. He's one of those players who you could think to yourself, well, I wouldn't feel I'd find myself in a great deal of trouble against him. He doesn't seem to have...
You would, Graham. I've seen you bat.
Completely, I would. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I would he'd tie me in knots. But what I'm saying is he is quite an innocuous kind of bowler, really, but he gets his results. And, yeah, he's got every chance.
I'll throw one more name in just before we move on to the next question, and that's Richard Gleeson, who is now at Lancs, ex of Northants. I've seen quite a bit of him, mainly on pre-season trips and in MCC games and stuff like that, but he's pretty nippy. He's quite accurate for a fast bowler, and I think he's got potential. He's got Lions recognition and stuff like that, and he was in the reserves for the one-dayers, wasn't he? But I like him, and I think he had a decent summer for Lancashire last year, didn't he? He took a couple of fifers and did quite well. So I think he's somebody that's there or thereabouts.
Got a few wickets again in this Bob Willis Trophy round, hasn't he? Lancashire have beaten Durham. So yeah, and one of those players who knows his game as well. He's not a young pup by any stretch of the imagination. So he's had time to work out what works for him, and hopefully, if and when he does get that chance, that is a positive for him.
It's a nice story, his, because he, as you say, came into it quite late. He was a coach at Old Trafford, wasn't he, for a while, walking around with the tracksuit, but in a completely different capacity. And he's had other jobs, done other things, and then made his
worked in a fish tackle shop.
Yeah,
in Blackpool, I think.
Yeah, so he's kind of taken the circuitous route into professional cricket. I mean, I always like talking to people like him and interviewing people like him, because you always get the sense that they appreciate what they've got a little bit more than maybe somebody that's come all the way through the age groups and has always been a bit of a big fish in a small pond. I think he's obviously come in from the side door, and I think he's really appreciating the fact that he's playing county cricket.
Yeah, and he's a good bowler. Very good, very good. And he's part of a very strong Lancashire seam bowling department. There are plenty of them out there. Saqib Mahmood, Luke Wood, Tom Bailey is somebody who's not talked about that often at all, but he's an excellent bowler as well. So yeah, there's plenty of talent around the country.
I remember talking to Sam Northeast. It was before Christmas sometime, and one of the things Sam said to me on the podcast was that in his time in the game, he thinks the county scene's as strong now with the youngsters coming through, and as he's ever known it.
Yeah.
Somebody playing in the game that knows what he's talking about, in a good position to actually give that assessment, I think. Let's move on to the next question. Phil says, will England played 2 spinners in the next test? Going down to the Ageas Bowl, Dom Bess was acting as the sole spinner, along with Joe Root providing a few overs the other end. I felt for Dom Bess actually in that first test match. The first innings, I think he bowled quite well, and he obviously got a couple of edges and had a stumping missed. Josh Buttler didn't do him any favours, I don't think, in that first innings. And then by the time it got to the second innings, I think he'd lost a little bit of confidence. And I suggested on Twitter that maybe it was time for Dom Bess, who I rate a lot, as we've said on the podcast before. I think he's got a big future for England. But whether it was maybe a chance for him to maybe sit out of a test match and just kind of work with the coaches and kind of think about what he's actually achieved so far this summer, take stock and work on a few things before he comes back into the side, and maybe give Jack Leach a game. But I suppose one way around that is to play 2 spinners down at the Ageas Bowl. They tend to get help down there, don't they? And if the sun's been out.
Yeah, it's just a bit of a shame, isn't it? I wouldn't be particularly... I'd be a little bit underwhelmed if it was kind of Leach and Bess. I would much rather it be Bess and Parkinson. That's not able to be the case because Parkinson's injured. I'd just like, with 2 spinners in a side, I would always like to see the kind of second spinner being a leggy.
Yeah.
just gives a completely different dimension. Two finger spinners, yes, they turn it in different directions, but I just think it's quite samey. And I would want Best to be stuck with, because I agree with you. I think he's a very, very good cricketer and has significant room for development as well. So I would like them to stick with him. I don't think he's done a great deal wrong. I wouldn't be particularly bothered about them playing two spinners if it's Leach and Best.
No. I think the only thing with Best playing is that with Root as the second spinner, they are very samey then, aren't they? Literally doing the same thing.
You're not kind of classing Root as a second spinner, are you? You're just classing him as someone who bowls a few overs here and there. You know, he's more than useful. There's no doubt about that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, but that's not his job to be a second spinner. His job is to go out there and score runs and to captain the side.
Advancements in the medical field are giving nurses faster, more effective results than ever before. They should expect the same from their education, too. Capella University's game-changing FlexPath format allows you to set your own deadlines and leverage your experience to move faster through your program. So the faster you move, the more money you save. When you're ready, we'll be here. Visit capella.edu for a trial course at no cost to you. Capella University. Don't just learn smarter.
Couple of slightly more silly questions, and welcome those for future podcasts. Hashtag Ask Badger. You can send in some silly ones as well. I don't like cricket, I love it. Asks me, kangaroo tentacles or chocolate-covered cockroaches? And that was because, Graham, just before Pakistan embarked on trying to bowl England out for less than 277, I said I would eat the contents of a bush tucker trial if Pakistan didn't win the test match. I've had a few messages. I've had a few messages like that over the last. Frantically trying to find the original tweet. I can't find it to delete it. So there you go. That's the conversation for another day. Hopefully not.
That's a question that you better answer then, because I'd go nowhere near any of them.
I think. Well, if it's got,
I wouldn't be that stupid to make a prediction like that.
I'll go for whatever's chocolate covered. But yeah, I prefer not to be honest. And then the final silly question, which was from Ted. Ted asks, from the 22 players in the first test, snog, marry, avoid, ? I will go first on this because you don't want to answer this because I've mentioned this to you before we press record. But I'm going to try and answer this in a crickety way, Ted, if you don't mind, because I prefer not to really snog or marry any of them. But I will snog Babar Azam's cricket because Babar Azam in that first innings, he's 69. I was in raptures. I fell in love with Babar Azam as a cricketer. I've seen a bit of him in white ball. I haven't seen a huge amount of him in red ball. And I just thought the way he approached that innings, some of the shots he played, I will snog that batting. That is fine by me. In terms of marrying, I'm going to marry Chris Woakes because I think Chris Woakes would make the ideal husband. I think he would tidy up. He would be considerate. He would do things for you. I think he'd look after you. So Chris Woakes would be my husband. And avoid, that's slightly nastier, isn't it? I'll come back to the avoid while Graham answers the snog and marry part.
I'll answer the avoid. I'm not going to answer the other two. I'll answer the avoid. I'd be avoiding Naseem Shah's bowling. I'd be at square leg. I'd be backing away. Tell you.
He was good, wasn't he?
Serious talent. Yeah. He's a serious talent.
Well, there we go. Between us, we've answered that, Ted. Between us, we've answered it. Yeah. I'll tell you what, we talked about it last week, about looking forward to watching Pakistan play. And their bowling attack, that it basically ticks every single box for me. I think, we mentioned at the start of the podcast, I think England maybe got out of jail a little bit in that first test match. Pakistan will be licking their wounds because I think they thought they got that test match won, and they should have got that test match won. But with Shaheen Shah Afridi with his left arm pace, with Abbas bowling his right arm dibbly-dobblers that look really innocuous, but he takes wickets, and then with Naseem Shah coming on and bowling rockets and looking the real deal, they've got the pace attack sorted out. Yasir Shah did play and bowled okay and took wickets, and Shadab Khan was his support bowler. So Pakistan, England won't find this. Don't think because England have won that first Test match, it's just going to be a walk in the park from here on. I would be very disappointed if Pakistan don't bounce back.
We've talked about mercurial Pakistan, and you never quite know what you're going to get from them. They could go the other way, couldn't they? They could be floored by that. And that could almost be the end of them for the series. There is a possibility for that. I don't think there's any doubt there. Their talent, of course, they could bounce back. And And let's hope that your theory on them licking their wounds and being ready to kind of roar back into this series and say, you're not doing that to us again, comes true. I just fear a little bit that it might have gone the other way, where they kind of say, oh, what have we got to do to win a test match? And they're still thinking about it come 11 o'clock at the start of day one at the Ageas Bowl.
I think one of the things in Pakistan's favour is that, I mean, they obviously can't go out there and play for them, but the coaching side that they've got isn't actually that far removed from playing, is it? You've got Mushy there as your spin coach, you've got Yunus Khan there as the batting coach, Waqar Yunus, recent guest on the podcast, is there as the bowling coach, you've got Misbah as the head honcho, and I think between them, there's a lot of test matches, there's a lot of experience. If you want to be talked down and then talked back up again by a set of inspirational Pakistani cricketers, I don't think you can go too far wrong with that. It's a bit of a hall of fame, isn't it?
Yeah, and they've got some work to do, though, haven't they? I mean, it was a fair old turnaround, as we've kind of ascertained already. So they'll be earning their money, the coaches. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
The final question. You're not going to answer the Snog and Marry part? Are you sure? We're going to move on?
Yeah, I'll leave that one, I think. Yeah.
Mark Anthony Hilton, he says, and this is, thanks Mark for this one, what is your next failed prediction to be plucked out of the lucky bag? He says. So we'll get to our prediction competition, which I think is what he's referring to there. And we haven't done that great, have we, to be honest, so far? But I think we got a few runners and riders in this one. I think we're going to do better in this series, Graham. Made some inspired selections in this. Our correct score tips are both live, because you've gone for 2-0, I went for 2-1 and 1-all, so all of those are still possible. So that's progress, because after the first West Indies test match, we were done there, weren't we? You've gone Root and Burns in your batting. I've gone for Root and Pope, and Pope is doing okay for me. Top Pakistan bat, we both went for Babar. You went for Shafiq and I went for Abid Ali. I'll tell you what, Babar Azam, even though Shan Masood's got off to a flyer, Babar can catch him. So I'm not too bothered about that just yet. In terms of the bowling, you went Broad and Archer, I went Broad and Best, so we're kind of in the mix. Top Pakistan bowler, you went for Shaheen and Shadib. Shaheen bowled nicely, didn't he? And he could easily end up being the top Pakistan wicket taker. I went for Nazim, I went for Abbas, and I went for Shaheen. So I've pretty much got all of the bases covered there, really. And our first test markets, though, Mark's certainly right with that, because it was quack oops all the way through the predictions there. So let's move on very quickly.
Don't worry about that legal injunction, because if he's following our tips, he won't be able to afford it.
Sorry, Mark. I'm sorry about this. I'll give you Graham's address later. You can just send the injunction there.
No, I shouldn't laugh, but just tickled me a bit there.
England-Pakistan, a second test match. We have 20 units, Graham, to finish off this edition of the Cricket Badger podcast. England are 10-11 to win the second test match. The draw is 5-2, and Pakistan are 3-1. You have 20 units. I have 20 units. All of the various markets available to you. I'm actually looking at the Bet365 website to take the prices from it.
Go on, you go first, because then I can do I can try and win the competition accordingly then.
I've seen a few people suggesting that this one might be a draw. I looked at the weather forecast, and it's going to be a little bit like it has been over the last few days, I think, if you can believe any of the weather forecasts that you read, because they can send men to the moon, but they can't actually tell you what's going to happen tomorrow in terms of rain. But if it is muggy, and there are chances of thunderstorms, and obviously thunderstorms aren't light showers, are they? They can be torrential for even if it's torrential for 20 minutes, that can keep you off for a while. So I'm tempted to look at the draw at 5-2 as one of my bets here. I'll come back to that in just a second, because I'm going to scroll down to the batting markets, and I'm looking at Babar Azam at 5-2 to be the top first innings batsman for Pakistan. I like that as well, and I also like Ollie Pope at 7-2 in the England market. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go 10 on the draw at 5-2. I'm going to go 5 on Ollie Pope at 7-2 to be the top England first innings batsman, and I'm going to put the other 5 on Babar at 5-2 to be the top Pakistan batsman.
I'm going to go Babar. I'm going to slightly have a variation on a theme. I quite like the idea of hundreds in the game, because the top batsman, you can be right in your prediction but wrong in the result almost, because somebody can pick you.
Pakistan knock up 700 in their first innings. There's 5 centurions. Babar's one of them, but he's the 5th lowest.
You know, you're right, aren't you? So I'm going to go for a Babar Azam century in the match, and I'm going to go 10 units there.
Babar Azam is available at 9-2.
I'm going to go for Shaheen Afridi, top Pakistan wicket taker, 5 units, just on the basis that, as I say, I'm not a great lover of going too deep into the top runs and top wickets, because you can get stuffed a little bit. But I think he's an excellent bowler. Can pick up some cheap wickets here and there with his height, and he's got a good Yorker and decent pace, all that kind of stuff. So I quite fancy him. Bowled very well in the first test. I'm going to go Rory Burns, 5 units on a century in the match.
Burns to score 100 as well is the same price as Babar Azam. That's a 9-2 shot as well. So in terms of our second test bets, listeners, I've gone for 10 on the draw at 5-2, 5 on Babar Azam to be the top Pakistan batsman at 5-2, and 5 on Ollie Pope to be the top England batsman at 7-2. Graham has gone 10 on Babar Azam to score a century at 9-2. He's gone 5 on Shaheen to take the most wickets for Pakistan at 11-4, and 5 on Rory Burns to score 100 is a 9-2 shot. So there are bets for the second test match. Graham Hardcastle, it's been an absolute joy as always. I am disappointed in you for not telling me who you're going to marry in Snog, but we could get to that next time when you join me ahead of the third test match. But thanks, mate, for coming on.
No problem. Take care.
New to Medicare? Start now. Go to myhealthpolicy.com to learn about some of the top-rated Medicare Advantage plans in your area, including plans for $0 a month in plan premiums, low out-of-pocket costs, and expansive provider networks. If you're thinking about a Medicare Advantage plan, myhealthpolicy.com is a great place to go to find a plan that meets your needs. Learn more about your options. Even talk with a licensed insurance agent. myhealthpolicy.com.
New to Medicare? Go to myhealthpolicy.com. With myhealthpolicy.com, you can compare plans from some of the nation's top insurers. Start now to find a plan and apply online. myhealthpolicy.com makes it easy to find a Medicare Advantage plan in your area, including plans for $0 a month in plan premiums, low out-of-pocket costs, and expansive provider networks.
My decision, my Medicare. myhealthpolicy.com.